Hi everybody, I want to talk to you again about the process of writing a book. A couple months ago I did a video and showed you the storyboard that I've built here in my office to start the book that I've been working on. And I wanted to come back with a second video and talk to you about the next step after you've done your storyboard when it's time to actually start writing the book. So let me back up just a little bit in case you didn't see the other video. What we have on the wall are the 15 chapters I think that I'll be doing for the sake of this book. And so as I've thought of ideas, as I've maybe been at church or at school or somewhere, and I thought about something that might fit well in the book, just jotted it down on whatever note I had at the time, and then I've come back and just added it to these chapters over the last couple of months. So now it's to the point, while I may do some more note taking along the way as I think of other things and come back and add that in here, it's really time now to go ahead and start writing. I have enough of a skeleton here. I gotta go ahead and get this book going. So what I'm going to show you in this video is how I took a particular chapter and put it into that format, that next step. And so a couple notes. First of all, you notice that I didn't start in order. I didn't start back here. So a couple reasons for that. I want to talk about that. Number one, I wanted to do what I just felt this week most passionate to write about. So the particular chapter that I picked up on, a couple incidents happened at work this week that got me thinking. I was already thinking on this topic. I was in that vein. So that's why I kind of jumped over here to the third thing on the wall and didn't start in order. So you got to write what you feel excited about in the moment and not try to go in order. Now, some of you may be watching this and you're actually writing a novel or some type of work of fiction. So I understand in your case, you may want us to go start to finish. I hope one day I can do a novel that's just not with the market that we have going right now, kinds of things we're doing. I'm not in that season, but if you're like me and you're doing something more of a self-help or a church tool, you can do that. You can pick and choose the kinds of things you're ready to write about at the time. And so that's one of the things going on. The other thing I want to mention, if you're one of my students, you've heard me say this in class about papers, so let's talk about with books. I teach my students in English classes, don't write your introduction first. We think of things linear, and so I've got to write a paper, so let me start with the introduction paragraph. Don't do that, because you don't know where you're going yet, and so you're going to have to probably rewrite that introduction anyway when you do tighten up and find what your real focus is going to be during the process of research and writing. Same thing with this book. I'm not going to start writing my introduction chapter, my preface, until I get further down the road and I really see the scope of how this project unfolds. So those are a couple of reasons why I started here, not at the beginning. So let's talk about this particular chapter. You see this blank spot where this chapter was. It was kind of halfway in between these two chapters you see up here. There's some chapters, you see an unevenness on this storyboard. There are some things that those topics I have a lot of information on, and I've been taking a lot of notes. Some that I'm going to have to do a lot more research because I don't have enough personal experience to talk about. The chapter that I did start on was probably about halfway in the middle. It wasn't as short as this one, it wasn't as long as this one going to the floor. It's kind of halfway in the middle. So I just yesterday pulled that down from the wall. And I walked over here and you can see where the remains of this poor little guy. I pulled all the notes off, I cut out some of the things I had typed in here, and I started the process of putting all of those notes and ideas on paper. And so I'll explain at a high level what the process looks like and then come back to this one. So what I will do is I go from storyboard notes to writing out, handwriting, manuscripting on paper, the chapter. And then in the next step, I'm going to put everything on the computer digitally. I'm going to go back, I'm going to print that out, I'm going to revise that, hand revising, and then I'm going to come back and make the updates here digitally. Of course, that's chapter by chapter. When it's all said and done, I'm going to have the big step of revising the whole thing, which is a huge project. But this is, so I'm in this process from going from notes on the wall to something digitally that I can actually use. And so what this looked like is I spent about 7 hours yesterday, and I started by just free writing on this chapter topic. And then you can see along the way, I would pull in the sticky notes and the notes that I had captured on this particular topic on the wall, and those are just stuck in here, and I'm free writing things along the way. So about 15 pages here handwritten, and I'm now going to put this digitally on the computer Those of you younger than me, you might could skip this step. You can go directly from your notes to written, and that may save you some time. I just grew up, if you can believe this, in the early days where we actually had to handwrite our drafts and then go to mom's typewriter in the old junior high days of some of the first papers I wrote. So that's my comfort level, to go from these concepts and these notes that I've scribbled months ago, to take those and try to put those into some kind of format. For me, there's an in-between step of the paper. Maybe you can save some time and just jump straight to drafting on the computer. But that just kind of gives you an idea of how we go from all these notes to how am I in a book of 40,000 words? Well, this in-between step of now drafting the individual chapters, that's where I am, and so I'm hoping that this experience can help you. A couple of things to mention. In this process of going from notes, this process, you can just visually see how wild and crazy this was. This is just a note randomly wherever. That's the creative side of our brain that we love to just come up with stuff. What happens is that we use one side of our brain to draft material, use a different side of our brain to revise, because we have to look critically at our work, analyze it, revise it, and that's a different part of the brain. So our brain's kind of at war in the writing process, that difference between writing and editing. Well, again, I want to just emphasize in this, I do this in-between phase because here I'm still trying to be creative, trying to go from loose notes to some actual drafted material. Then the next phase, when I start moving to the computer, now I am going to start easing into an editing mode. I've got enough material here that I can kind of edit as I put this into the computer digitally. It's tough. In fact, today I was going to try to go ahead and get a whole chapter in a weekend. I did this step yesterday. I was going to try today to do the process, about 3 or 4 hours of getting this, because it's not just typing. I'm still writing a little bit as I go, and I'm revising. But I just knew today I was not in the frame of mind to do that. So you have to know that about yourself. You have to, in the same way, you have to understand what chapter am I emotionally, or whatever you want to call it, mentally ready to write about this weekend. Same deal. I've got to decide, am I able to write today? Is this the day I can write? I wish it was mechanical. I wish you just grabbed this and started writing and it just turned right out. But it's not always like that. For that creative side of our brain to be working, you got to know where you are and what kind of day it is to know if you can do that. So what this looks like for me is, I mentioned in the other video, theoretically, if I could get a chapter done a weekend, in 15 weekends, since I know I'm doing 15 chapters, I could have this book done and then start that process of revising. I know that's not going to happen because I'm having days like today where I just couldn't do this. But hopefully you can see how this model works to break down this huge, big, overwhelming project in some small, manageable chunks that aren't so overwhelming, so we can just start working through this process of the book and just get it done. You'll have to find pockets where you can work. I mentioned yesterday it was about 7 hours of writing. It doesn't take everybody that long. That's just where I was, and that's how slowly I work. You got to find pockets. If you're interested, mention in the comments, and maybe I'll do a future video about how I've personally found pockets of writing time. That's one of the biggest reasons. A lot of people say, oh, I'm going to write a book one day. Most people don't ever do it. Usually it's because how do you find the time in the busy pace of life? I've tried to create pockets and create times, protect the time that I can write. And again, if you think that's helpful, mention in the comments, and maybe the next video, as I go to that stage of revising, I'll do a video there. But if it's also helpful to do a video to talk about finding time to write, we can talk about that too. So again, I just want to share my experience. A lot of you have been commenting saying you're interested in writing, and how do you do this? How does this whole process come together? This is just a way that I'm trying to make this big process small and manageable and doable. So I hope it helps. Thanks so much.